Well, I want to welcome everybody to today's wrap meeting. As you all know, this is I don't know if you all know this, so I'm going to tell you this. This is a very important group. This is a very sort of a grassroots but very effective working group that we have going here. It's informal in that people come and go, make it to some meetings and not all, but in general, I am so proud that this is a very active group of people who are deep in the mix of trying to restore affordable, available home insurance options throughout California, but also to link arms and promote as much wildfire risk reduction at the individual level and at the community level as we can. So although the charter of this group is to help solve people's insurance problems, along the way here through our collaborations, we have been boosting the ability of communities throughout California to put programs in place, to hold events, to find ways to access funding for risk reduction. And I think those of you who have been following the headlines know our progress on restoring insurance options has been not what we would have been hoping. But we are working so hard every day, many of us or all of us in some way while we look at what kind of a plan B what might we create, whether it's to make sure people still have safety nets, or what can we do to restore insurers' confidence in the marketplace in California. Whatever the solutions are, the people who've been coming on these calls are engaged in looking for them. And on behalf of my organization, we ran an op-ed this week in the Santa Rosa Press Democrat that Emily can put a link to it in the chat. I think I've gotten some really good feedback that the op-ed kind of pulls it all together from our perspective and explains why the market is where it is and what needs to be done. So for those of you who are really wondering if there's if there's one place to kind of pull it all together, you can take a look at that editorial. And I want to acknowledge a few of our partners. Stacy Heaton with the Rural County Representatives of California is with us today. And RCRC, as they're known. If you're not familiar with them, very important partner for UP because they have their members are county officials throughout the state. And so a lot of their members have been hearing loudly from their constituents about the crazy premiums people are being asked to pay and this frustration people are having when they find that the FAIR plan is their only option. And so not only is RCRC helping us get our survey out, our home insurance survey link out so we get as big a sample as we can and we keep tabs on what's happening. But they have also been helping us. For example, we recently did a webinar with one of their members, Butte County, and I think their current president still, Doug Teeter, for Butte County residents on shopping. And we're going to put a link to that one, the recording of that and the slide deck in the chat as well. That's UP's most up-to-date shopping help webinar, I'd say. We do, we're doing something tomorrow night with the insurance commissioner for with an assembly person. But again, I took our Butte deck and shrunk it down for that. So that's kind of the greatest hits in terms of messaging right now for people. A few other folks I want to give a shout out to in addition to our special guest speaker. We've got Kate Stillwell, whose company, Kate, I don't want to put you on the spot, but Kate has been innovating, and when we're looking at what are we going to do here if we can't get insurers to come back, the ones that we know, or to get them to stay, what kind of alternative alternatives could we be working on? And we're looking at risk pools. But one of the things that would make some risk pools possibly work for communities would be the availability of smaller level insurance products. And Kate has been an innovator in something called parametric insurance. Which is basically you pay very affordable price. And then if your home is located within a certain perimeter, under their earthquake parametric product, if there's an earthquake within your vicinity, within this defined region, then money, I think, gets automatically put into your bank account. I think we don't have the wildfire product yet. Is that right, Kate? We don't have it yet.
Not yet.
But people are working in that direction. So, and those of you who are in the disaster recovery world may know that SBA loans are now, it used to be that the most you could borrow from the SBA after a disaster would be $250,000. Now it's up to $500,000. So we're looking at different ways to cobble together some assurance for property owners that they will have the means to pay for repairs and rebuilding in the event of a disaster. We don't have to go there quite yet. We still have lots of insurers in the market doing business, but every day there's feels like there's still been bad news. Yesterday there was bad news about Kemper, but again, them pulling out and some of their smaller units. So we're looking for the good news still. And on that note, with those couple of shout outs, I want to welcome our guest speaker, who probably all of you know or know of, Chief Daniel Berlant. He was appointed very recently, State Fire Marshal with 1L by Governor Gavin Newsom, October 6th. He began his career with Cal Fire in 2001 as a volunteer. Was hired in 2002 in the Fire Prevention Bureau of the Nevada Yuba Placer Unit. Then he jumped to becoming Cal Fire's communications officer as a fire prevention specialist in Sacramento in 2005. And those of you who know, I mean, from the tree mortality task force that gave birth to this working group to numerous initiatives that are going on around the state, task forces and working groups and commissions. Chief Berlant is part of all of that work. So I don't think you're going to find a more committed, more involved, more experienced member of the state Cal Fire than Daniel. He's been, I can't imagine how many meetings you go to every day. And he was going to be our speaker earlier this fall, but took ill. And so we're so glad to see your healthy face. And your son, by the way, is super adorable. Watching those pictures of your installation. So congratulations. And Daniel's going to be sharing a slide deck with us today and walking us through grants that are available, programs that are available, updates, and the latest on Cal Fire's efforts to promote wildfire risk reduction and ongoing security for California property owners. Thank you so much, Daniel.
Great. Well, thank you for that introduction, and it's good to see some familiar faces and familiar names. As Amy mentioned, I was just appointed the State Fire Marshal. I've been doing the job as acting since January 1st, and prior to that, I worked in more or less our fire prevention program for the department. The legislature in 21 created a new division within our organization, which I was tasked with leading, and that was our Community Wildfire Preparedness and Mitigation Division. With me today is Staff Chief Jim McDougald, who is one of the leaders of that organization. But essentially, we have 63 various folks as part of our team that ensure that our department has a focus on fire prevention. Obviously, we are a huge organization, 12,000 men and women, mostly firefighters, but our team focuses on preventing the fires, preparing communities. So I'm going to show a few slides here. So hopefully I can get this to work. Maybe Amy, you can give me a thumbs up if you guys can all see that. Okay, perfect. So, just to summarize a little bit for the team here, but, in less than a decade, California has experienced its largest, its most damaging, even the most deadliest wildfires in our state's history. And again, this is a very informed group, so I don't need to tell you all that stuff. But obviously, our dry Mediterranean climate in California has always lent itself to wildfires. And so that's really not necessarily a new issue, but we've really had a confluence of issues that have led to an immense wildfire crisis. And despite the complexity to those challenges, I'm here to tell you that California does have a strong strategy, and this working group and many of the members here and really all of the partners in insurance are part of that strategy. Now, our roadmap really comes from the Wildfire and Forest Resilience Task Force. Amy gave reference to the birth of this working group out of the Tree Mortality Task Force, which led to the state's Wildfire and Forest Resilience Task Force, which really is a collaboration of state, federal, local, and tribal entities. Supervisor Teeter, that was referenced earlier from Butte County, sits on the executive committee representing local government on that task force. And so he and my boss, Director Joe Tyler, and several others are really paving the way of building this interagency framework that establishes not only healthy and resilient forests, but also ensuring that our communities can withstand and adapt to wildfires. And so this action plan that I'll reference probably throughout this afternoon and the work again by many on this call really is our North Star for wildfire resiliency. It gives us our 4 goals. It gives us the 99 key actions that we work towards. Now, as a state, we've made major investments in our response capabilities. As I mentioned, we have 12,000 firefighters. We have over 60 firefighting aircraft. We're adding more aircraft. We are able to surge, bringing on extended resources during the peak of fire season. And so when you add our federal fire agencies, our mutual aid from our local and our tribal partners, the 1,000 local and tribal fire departments here in California, California arguably has the strongest wildfire response capabilities really in the world. But our wildfire resilience strategy, well, let me rephrase that. But even with the strong operations and with the best firefighters in the country globally, arguably, we're not going to respond our way out of this crisis. And so we have to focus on this wildfire resilience strategy that really is focused on 3 key areas. First, parcel level mitigation, vegetation space in and around homes, building materials, community hardening. This is land use planning, making sure that we have design standards for developing neighborhoods, building fuel breaks in and around communities, which I'll touch on funding here in a moment on that, reducing overgrown vegetation near roadways so that we have evacuation routes. And then the third area focus of our wildfire resilience strategy is our forest health, restoring at landscape level ecosystems that help remove the overcrowding of our forests, putting prescribed fire back on the ground, for example. There really is not one solution. There's not a silver bullet. We have to do all of these things in order for us to become a more resilient state. And so our strategy is really a nested approach, as you can see, from this diagram. We need to do all of these rings within the circle to achieve resiliency. Now, in the wake of the wildfires in 2018, 2020, even as late as 2021, California has made unprecedented investments in wildfire resiliency. To carry out these programs, we really have surged our funding from what was just roughly $200 million not that long ago. And let me tell you, when we got that $200 million from Senate Bill 901 following the 2017 North Bay fires, $200 million was a huge amount to us to do forest health and fire prevention. But we have surged that from $200 million to now roughly $2.6 billion over the past several years. And this funding, it doesn't just go to hire more firefighters or pay for more of our staff. In fact, none of this money is going towards response. This is just in resiliency. And while we spread it out over multiple departments, not just Cal Fire, a huge portion of this money we turn around and we look to local organizations, many of which some of you represent, to help leverage your capacity to carry out projects. We support your projects that, again, all line up to our overall wildfire and resilience strategy. But again, a huge amount of investment and funding bringing forward to date. Out of this pot of money, 550 projects have been able to be funded in just the past 3 years. Now at Cal Fire, we have 10 unique grant programs, each of them tailored towards addressing different parts of resiliency. So you can see on this screen, these are each of our programs. Now the main one I'm going to talk about today is our wildfire prevention grant program. And then a little bit about our forest health. But you can see anything from tribal resiliency, where we're helping fund cultural burning, for example, or even workforce development with our tribes, helping small landowners, 3 to 5 to 10 acres, make improvements on their little mini forests, if you will, that through funding out of our California Forest Improvement Program. But each of these programs is, again, tailored to a very specific focus. But as we step out, all to meet our overall resilience strategy. At the end of this, I'll be able to access each one of these. We know that sometimes people are all just just trying to get funding, but tailor to what is your specific need. And again, today I'm going to focus on parcel level and community mitigation, and that really is best left towards our wildfire prevention grant program. This is our 10th year of this program. To date, we have funded over 800 local projects through this grant, totaling over $500 million. So just a significant amount in the last decade. And it's trickled up significantly. As I talked about that huge surge, when we started this program 10 years ago, one year we had $5 million, another year we had 10, kind of went up and down, but $5 to $10 million for an entire state. Nothing, but the legislature and the administration program, and over the last several years, each year we've been able to give out over $100 million to really speed up and expedite the local investments in these projects. Our program is really broken up into 3 different buckets. The first is hazardous fuel reduction. Obviously, here's a photo of some of our crews doing vegetation in and around can be used for tree mortality, so dead vegetation as well. Some communities put together a chipping program. Obviously here, this is one of our Cal Fire chippers, but your Fire Safe Council, your organization can purchase a chipper and provide chipping to your residents. That's a very common category. Fuel reduction can be putting in fuel breaks around your community, can be introducing prescribed fire. We're really trying to increase the pace and scale in this category, or clear out the roadside overgrown vegetation. Green waste bins, another one. So it's a pretty broad category, but again, anything that removes dead or overgrown vegetation in and around communities is the focus of our hazardous fuel reduction section. The next bucket, if you will, is our wildfire prevention planning. This can be anything from the creation of a neighborhood evacuation plan, the establishment of a community wildfire protection plan. Many of our federal grant sister programs require and even to get federal reimbursements after disasters require that a community has a CWPP. And so this program can fund CWPP creations or updates. Also, local hazard mitigation plans that are required for all types of emergencies, not just or disasters, not just wildfires, can be funded. This. If you're a city or county and you're trying to update your general plan and you need funding for your safety element, this program can fund that as well. But so again, anything that is planning to prevent a wildfire or is preparing your community, even long term, for the preparedness of preparing against a wildfire. The third and the last bucket here is our wildfire prevention education. And so whether this is workshops, town hall meetings, creation of educational materials or activities, anything that really is focusing on getting members of the public informed, educated, motivated to doing their part in wildfire resiliency, creating defense space, learning about home hardening, this education category. So again, just to kind of go back, three main buckets of this program: hazardous fuel reduction, wildfire planning, and wildfire prevention education. So who's eligible? Reality, almost anybody is eligible, really, unless you are a for-profit company or an individual. All other organizations are eligible. So mostly we are gearing this program and focusing on local governments and nonprofit entities. And local government can be anything from a city or a county to a special district, whether it be fire protection, a water district, community service district, resource conservation district. Any government formed special district would count as well. And so again, cities, counties, special districts of all kinds are eligible for the program. We really are focused to try to help those that maybe don't have the capacity. And that's where Fire Safe Councils really are a target for us, nonprofit organizations. Now they have to have a 501c3, but we have a number of small organizations that find fiscal sponsors. But we do require there to be a nonprofit organization as a fiscal sponsor, so that we have the oversight. But many Fire Safe Councils have that designation. There are other local conservation corps that again fall under this category as well. Tribal entities, we've seen a good increase in tribal nations that have applied for this program. Again, we do have another program just focused on wildfire resiliency with tribes, but tribal entities that want to do wildfire prevention scale work can apply and are eligible for this. And so are state and federal agencies. And while we really don't focus on giving the state of California and other federal agencies dollars, anybody who's willing to do the work and has a good project that benefits us as California residents are really eligible. And so we do have other partners like state parks, the CCC, for example, that at a local level want to do projects in and around communities. And so state and federal agencies are eligible for this program. So I want to give you a little bit some key dates. I have it on good authority that as soon as tomorrow, we will likely open up our next round of grants. I'll note that we just literally concluded last fiscal years. We just had awarded 96 projects for somewhere around $113 million. And those nearly 100 projects right now, we are finishing agreements so that they can get funded and begin work. But now we are planning for the coming year, for 2024. And so we're very likely, again, as soon as likely tomorrow, but I'll just say November to speak generally, open up an additional solicitation period where we will accept applications. Now, it's important to note, as our ability to try to make it easier to access this money and to use 21st century technologies, to be honest with you, we are moving away from paper form or Adobe PDF applications. And just like we did last year, we have transitioned to an electronic application process. Not only is it meant to streamline the application process itself, applying, but it helps on the back end for us in our review of the applications, in being able to quickly identify issues grants management and open grants today across all of our grant programs, 1,000 open grants. And so we have to have a grants management to hold the transparency that the legislature requires of us and the public expects of us as well. And so last year, I'll just be honest with you, we had some hiccups. Anytime you use a system the first time, trying to train all of us how to use it can be difficult, but we once again will be accepting applications through this online system. Again, we'll accept applications through January. When we make the announcement, we'll make sure that Amy and Emily and the folks at UP have that, so you can share that. Amy, if you don't mind, thank you, with your members and with this group. But it will have all the specific times and dates. Our plan is to try to process them as quickly as possible. Last year, for example, while we were able to award 96 projects, we reviewed over 400 applications. And again, there were great projects. There's just not enough funding, even with the major surge that we've had. And so it takes us several months to make sure that the applications meet all of the requirements, that they're good quality projects. And so our goal is to make an announcement of the awarding for next year in spring or early summer. So look for more information on our grants in the coming days. The other program that I want to mention to you is our Forest Health program. They're very likely going to launch, I believe they've already announced November 6th. So about a week from now, they will launch their solicitation. They too have just about $100 million. This program is really looking at landscape level forest related projects. Our program that I focused on earlier, the Wildfire Prevention Grant Program, differentiates from the sister program of Forest Health because we're really looking at smaller projects, strategic in and around communities, where our Forest Health program is, again, looking at larger landscape, watershed, ecosystem level types of projects. But if you have a partner organization in your agency or in your county or in your organization that is wanting to do a large project, this program is likely the more appropriate one for you. Again, look for more information on that coming in November. We'll throw the screen on. I'll pause here. I put on a QR code, but this is the link to get to our grants portal. This is where you can, and hopefully really quick, you just take your phone, open up the camera, hold it up to the QR code, and I'm saying that as I do it and double check it that it works. And it takes you right to our Wildfire Prevention Grants page. And again, possibly as early as the beginning of the month, which is tomorrow, we'll have updated information on that website that you'll be able to go. But you can go there today and start learning more about the program. We've got a lot more details. We have a whole procedural guide. But we have a whole host of resources. Our team really works to make themselves accessible, whether that is through email and answering questions you might have throughout the process, but also they are already working to create not just a number of workshops where we'll be able to do some face-to-face or some virtual opportunities for you to ask questions and go way more in detail than I'm doing today, but also to have office hours. When we understand that when people fill out government applications for grants, they typically aren't very easy. And so our team really tries to make themselves available, holding office hours so that as needed, anybody can drop in and say, the application asks for this. I don't know what that means. And while we provide this very detailed procedural guide, it's some, maybe 100 pages, sometimes it's just better to ask a human being a simple question and get a direct answer. And so our team works hard to make themselves available to provide that face time with you to answer your question. So again, on that website, the first link, though, if you write it down, or even if you go to the QR code and go to the Wildfire Prevention Grant page, you can go back to the grants portal that has all of our various grant programs. So again, one more reminder, early November, over $100 million, taking applications 2.5 to 3 months. So closing sometime in December. I like to put this picture back up, circling back to Yosemite and really showing what we're trying to achieve in California. What does wildfire resilience mean? And it's the protection of beautiful places like this. Going back to the funding, though, if we learned anything from last year, it's that despite whatever type of fire year we have, whether it's a lot of fires, not a lot of fires, destructive, not destructive, last year demonstrated to us that when we invest in resiliency at scale, we actually can see results even in the face of extreme climate conditions. And so the funding is working. But again, it has to be to do all of these things. We can't just take care of the forest, but we also, on the converse, can't just take of our own individual property. Have to have forest health. It takes truly to see change. Again, these have to be together as a system, if you will. And while each year it seems like we keep breaking records, one after another, for the most destructive fire season or the most deadliest fire season, these are not records we like breaking. And so I know that our efforts today, and hopefully your work, if you're eligible to a trajectory that we have been on, and that we can continue to recalibrate to bring us back to that picture of ensuring that Yosemite is able to be there for our grandchildren, and at the end of the day, really address the long-term health that we need here in California, and to provide really a safe, prepared, and even sustainable coexistence with fire. So that is a very quick snapshot of kind of where we are with our wildfire resilience strategy, and our funding opportunities. So Amy, I'll turn it back to you, and happy to myself. We also have Frank Bigelow, one of our assistant deputy directors. And so between Frank, Jim, and I know that we'd be happy to answer any of your questions.
Well, thank you so much, Chief Berlant. We have a number of questions in the chat. I have a few of my own, and I want to remind the attendees that you're welcome to put a question in the chat if you have it. And I'll do my best to elicit an answer here. And I apologize, there's been a little bit of technical difficulties with the feed, a little bit of in and out, but I think we got all the meat. So I really, really appreciate you taking the time and then to give us the good news about money being available. So a few questions from the group. Can an HOA qualify, or it has to be a 501c3? Do I get that right?
Yeah, correct. An HOA has to have some governance of it. I'm double checking really quick, but you have to have a 501c3. So most HOAs are not nonprofits, and so you need to find a fiscal sponsor. We have HOA groups that kind of put together and coordinate a project, but they do that through a fiscal sponsor like a local fire safe council.
Okay, so the statewide California Fire Safe Council, I know they also they have their own grants clearinghouse. You tag team with them? They're also a partner in getting the word out. Are they also a resource?
Yeah, they're a huge resource. And I know we have some CFSC representatives here today, but yes, we do a huge amount of partnership with the California Fire Safe Council. One, coordination, making sure we're not duplicating effort. Two, making sure that we're being strategic. But then three, a number of the Fire Safe Council programs are funded through us, because one resource that I want to mention is we fund through the Fire Safe Council a county coordinator. So all counties, with the exception of just a small little handful, almost all counties have a county coordinator that help bridge that gap. And so I can drop in the link here, the information from the California Fire Safe Council. But the short answer is yes, we work very closely with them so that we're being strategic, we're not duplicating, but then they also work on our behalf to implement a number of programs.
Okay, thank you. So we're going to have somebody at the next meeting, which for everybody is 11/28, November 28th will be our next WRAP meeting. We will be having somebody talk about the matching grant program they've got going in Napa. We have heard from Marin, Chief Tyler talked about their matching grant. Do you give a preference? I mean, not every community has a demographic that can afford to meet the matching, grants. Is that like a priority for is an application going to get preference if they are offering matching grants?
The short answer for wildfire prevention grants is no. We do not give preference if you have a match. What we're looking for is community support. But part of our effort is to make sure that vulnerable populations, and again, maybe those that don't have capacity, some counties are very robust. They hire grant coordinators, they hire grant writers, and that's great. The need is just the same in I don't even want to name County 1 and County 2, but if County 1 can afford to hire a grant writer, that's great for them. But we also want to make sure that we're helping those who can't, and that's why that county coordinator program through the Fire Safe Council is so important. But we do want to know that there's community support, and again, that may be as simple as making sure that before you just apply, that you work with our local Cal Fire unit. They are the ones who review the grant application first, and one of the things they're looking for is how does this project tie to our strategic fire plan? Every one of our Cal Fire units has a strategic fire plan, much like a CWPP, but also a CWPP is another place. We're looking for, does this project fall in an existing planning document? If it does, that's what's going to give it additional help. If you can match it and you can leverage bringing in your own dollars, that's great. You can make things go a lot further. And a lot of our projects do that. But again, we do not require that because we want to make sure that the small organization that can't afford or doesn't have the resources to do that has just the same amount of chance of getting our dollars.
Okay, thank you. We had a couple questions that get at the concerns for people who live in suburban areas. They're not even technically in the WUI, but they're in a suburban area. Are those communities, obviously people in those communities are getting hit very hard with the insurance premium increases and scarce options. So is there some kind of balance of attention being paid to those areas? Or are we, in terms of your grant focus, is it really heavily skewed towards WUI and forested areas?
This program is skewed to the first part of what you said, which is WUI areas. Forested, not necessarily. Urban, not necessarily. We're really looking for, we look at a couple different metrics. One is, what's the fire hazard severity of that area? And we categorize that into three rankings: moderate, high, and very high. And then we look at other factors like how many people benefit from this project, how many homes are at risk of wildfire. And so again, whether you're in a suburban area, whether in the WUI, whether in a rural area, we're looking at those factors equally. But again, if you're in an urban area that has low fire risk, yeah, you're going to get scored less. But if you're in a high fire hazard area and there's only benefits to a single home with a population of 5, that too is going to be weighted low. And so again, we're looking at a lot of factors that come together, but really we're looking at fire hazard in addition to the population. And population is not just the number of, we also, as required by some of the funding sources that we use, look for disadvantaged communities, low income communities. Those do get additional points, if you will, in this process.
Okay, thank you. We had a question from our great friend, Steve Quarles. Chief Berlant, maybe you can update the group on the home hardening program that developed from AB 38. Seems like at pilot county level now.
Yeah, so outside of this wildfire prevention grant program, we've been working with Cal OES for several years now to essentially develop a home hardening initiative, a financial assistance program. We're piloting it in 6 counties. Those include Lake County in Kelsey Riviera. I got to close my eyes as I think about this. Lake County, Kelsey Riviera, in Shasta County, in the Whitmore area, San Diego County in the Del Zura area, and then we've brought on 3 additional pilots that are one phase behind, but they include a portion of El Dorado County, I think it's the Weber Creek area, portion of Tuolumne County that I'm not going to remember the exact area, and then a pilot in Siskiyou County. That 6th pilot, the Siskiyou one, is just for defensible space only. Essentially, that program, though, does a couple things. One is it's purely focused on vulnerable populations. That could be income level, that could be age, both elderly and young, those that don't speak English, those that don't have a car. There's a number of social vulnerabilities that we looked into to determine those that were at the highest fire risk, if you will, in connection with social vulnerabilities. It's a pilot program, and so that's why there are 6 of them. And again, essentially, we are trying to harden their homes, something we've really, at any level scale, not been able to do. The project is hopefully within the next month or 2, we'll get the green light from FEMA.
Well, we like the green light. Hopefully,
A match. Okay. Did I cut out?
yeah, sorry.
Sorry.
No.
I don't know why the internet here is breaking up, but we are working to match federal dollars with this program. That has taken a lot longer than we had hoped, but hopefully in the next month or so, the first homes will start seeing retrofitting. Again, there's a lot of barriers to a government-sponsored and federal dollars connected to mitigating a single person's home. But again, we're trying to help those who can't help themselves, who can't afford to do the work, and make sure that at community scale, we're hardening an entire community, not just a one-off here or there, but an entire community. Again, it's a pilot because there are a lot of challenges. What if the neighbor doesn't want to participate? How do you get community level scale hardening if the neighbor doesn't? But we're also building a framework as part of that any of your communities can use and work towards hopefully overcoming the barriers that we've now identified and figured out the solution. But now hopefully you'll be able to do it faster. So the short of it is look towards as early as next month for us to start actually hardening the first communities.
Great. You know, I try with having just one of these RAP meetings be just dedicated to people sharing their best arguments for naysayers. You know, how do you come back and refute what somebody else says? And which brings us to a category of questions that are a little trickier around insurance. You know, people, one of the of course our big motivators here is like, okay, well, if people know that they're going to be able to keep their insurance or get a better price for it, it's a great motivator to get them to invest time and money in hardening their homes and creating defensible space. And it's just been a very, very slow train coming. So I have a couple questions for you about your interface with insurance company folks. And I know that obviously IBHS has really done everything they could to give the prescription and bring their insurance funders kind of into the under the tent with us, and there's been a bit of a slow take-up rate for their wildfire prepared home, but we're hope springs eternal. And then we have the whole Safer from Wildfires rubric, and I think the Department of Insurance, we've certainly we've had some DOI reps on our calls talking about the status of the mitigation discounts, and just again an update for folks, if you watch the Butte County shopping help webinar recording that Emily put in the chat, you'll see a series of slides that talk about the discounts that are now available for FAIR plan policyholders. So we do have some success that if you are with the FAIR plan, that you can apply for up to a 15% discount. But are you able to speak to whether you are having conversations with insurance company folks. I know we have a question about the hazard maps and how and whether insurers are gonna, are using those. Can you speak to that a little bit, Chief Berlant?
The short answer is yes. We are doing a significant amount of coordination, both with the insurance associations, the insurance research arm, which you mentioned, IBHS, but also the Insurance Information Institute, to really make sure that we are aligning our messaging. The Safer from Wildfires framework that CDI has probably presented to you, we helped collaborate with them. One of the things that we worked really hard was to make sure that from a wildfire prevention mitigation standpoint as experts, that we were ensuring that CDI's regulations and framework were aligned with the best practices that we tell the public and that we require of the public, and that we didn't see requirements that were not science-backed or that were not consistently applied. And so we've done a lot with the Department of Insurance in particular to make sure that their regulations align mitigations, and that alignment is amongst not just us at CALFIRE and Department of Insurance, but Amy, as you know, we had United Policyholders come and present to this working group. We had the two major associations that represent a good portion of Californians, insurers that are in California. They came and participated. We're constantly talking to them about these grants, about where we are with defensible space regulations, where we are with the fire hazard severity zones. And so that then kind of segues to the second part of that question. We've done a lot of interface with insurance companies and the associations. And when we've talked to them about fire hazard severity zones by the state, how do you use them? Do you not? Because we hear often, and I will tell you, my own insurance company told me I can't have insurance because I live in a moderate fire hazard severity zone. Spoiler alert, I don't. I live in an unmapped area. I would know, again, our team does it, but not all of the brokers know those answers. But we worked with our insurance associations to show them the science behind ours. And they very adamantly said, we do not use fire hazard severity zones as a factor. Now, are the factors that you determine the fire hazard severity zones factors that are similar, and the science that is similar to what we use to determine in our own modeling? Yeah, the answer is yes. The wind, the weather, the fire intervals, these aren't secrets. They are consistent data sets that are used amongst them. But if you truly talk to some of the actuarials, the ones who actually look to make determination of, is this the right home, and should a company do it? The actuarials will say, we're not using fire hazard severity zone as a determining factor. Now, listen, I can tell the 59 folks on this call, but I realize that not everyone will believe, the black box that insurance companies use to make determination. All I can tell you is that we are working to make sure that we're updating our zoning and our mapping to use the best available science and data. Much of that available science and data, the insurance companies have been using to do their own risk modeling for many, many years. And so really our update of the fire hazard maps really is just kind of bringing us in line with answers that the insurance companies already know.
That makes a lot of sense to me. And, as somebody who's been watching the insurance industry for my whole career, since the 80s, and trying to understand how decisions get made by executives, I feel like, if we can get through this wildfire season without a big conflagration, obviously, structures lost, and I almost hate to say it because we're not there yet. But if we can, I feel like there's so much momentum building among the stakeholders on this call and many other sectors that they'll, insurers are traditionally, they are slow to shift like a big giant ocean liner, although they certainly don't seem to be moving slowly when it comes to non-renewals. So I don't know, I'm still very optimistic that we will start to bring insurers more and more back in under our tent. But let's get a little bit more down to the micro level here again. So when the Safer from Wildfires rubric and the IBHS rubric came out at the same time, sort of two sets of standards, almost identical, except for the boxed eaves part that's in the Safer from Wildfires on that list. We were a little worried about that one because, we understanding that putting mesh in front of an opening is something that's very cost effective. We've had the Brand Guard vent folks on these calls for a while, and we know that their products are very affordable. When we look at things that are like low hanging fruit, what can the majority of homeowners actually afford to do? It's always been that. But the boxing eaves. So we have a question. The under eave area. I'm sorry. 2 pathways on enclosed eaves. Calfire low cost and NIST document talked about ceiling gaps greater than 1/8 an inch or larger. New company waiting to enter the game. Enclosing eaves is not affordable. Can you speak to that, Chief Berlant?
Well, what I can tell you, and not to put him on the spot, but we also have Steve Hawks, who helped develop the low cost retrofit list. We realize that there are many retrofits that are important, and not all of them are low cost, right? The roof, for example, is a very costly thing. Boxing in your eaves is not one of them. The low cost list, though, were things that we felt were important, but that could be done whether it be for little or no cost, little being the operative word. Because, for example, some of the items on our low cost retrofit list say, if you're going to replace your windows, for example, as a low cost item, make sure they're double paned. So we know that windows by themselves are expensive, but if you're already going to replace the windows, so there's a little bit of caveating there. But back to your the first portion of your question, we worked very hard to align the Safer from Wildfires requirements with the best practices that were out there. But it is important to note that the 0 to 5 foot regulations by the Board of Forestry that will require no flammable items within the first 5 feet, or at least limit them, has not yet been published or adopted. And so there were things that we worked on for that Safer from Wildfires that we knew conceptually were important, but there weren't always regulations spelled out. Same thing, the IBHS prepared homes really was being launched around the same time period. And so we got a lot of insight early on. But the key here is that our partnership with the Department of Insurance remains open, and we're continuously talking. And so if we need to work with them to make some adjustments, would love to hear that feedback. I didn't fully understand in the question whether the boxed eaves wasn't a part of the prepared homes or the Safer from Wildfires or our low cost retrofit list. I wasn't quite sure where we thought we needed to add that. But again, at the end of the day, we're constantly making improvements to the code. And so if we need to also work with CDI to see if they'll update their regulations, or there are partners here from IBHS on this call, they too will hear that and see where we can take it, because there's a lot of research going on right now that we just have to continue to learn and pivot with.
Yeah, I mean, no doubt. I think, those of us who are just, very focused on helping people be able to comply to the point where they qualify for a discount. That's kind of where our heads are at. And we worry about the items on the list that are the most sort of challenging for people, right? To find somebody who can do it, or all that. Boxing.
One thing too, Amy, let me just mention, from my perspective, and remember, I don't regulate insurance, so that is outside. Last 6 years, we have a lot of data on which of the mitigations.
Go ahead. We lost you for a minute.
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
I was just going to say that out of the 50,000 homes that have been destroyed in the last 6 years, we have a lot of data that really informs the mitigations that we're doing, and that we're working to continuously improve our codes. And so we realize that even in the Safer from Wildfires, some of those things are costly, but you got to look at it spread out over years as a long-term investment, not just in, how much does it cost me this month, but overall compared to premiums, compared to non-renewals and having to go to the fair plan. You got to balance it out. It's just not the one-time investment, knowing that, again, if you have to replace your roof, that's a lot of money at one time that you may not have available to you, but spread out over the next 30 years and 30 years now of protection against your home, you got to kind of look at it as well that way.
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, for us, when we had an IBHS rep on, when they were first, sharing with us the details of how you get the wildfire prepared home designation, and we're all, excited about that, just as we've been excited about Safer from Wildfires. For us, it's like, bring it, good. It'd be great if the lists were the same, right? I asked, the IBHS, I don't know, folks, are you going to be like absolutely no negotiation literal on the 5 feet? And they, have come back many times and said, unfortunately, yes. I've talked to some other fire folks that are, the experts that say, well, it could be 2 feet, but I think that they felt that they had to draw that line in the sand. But there is a question about, the lists are a little different. And, do you feel like we have to go back and do a new list? Or do you feel like between the Safer from Wildfires and the wildfire prepared home and the low cost, there's enough overlap to where people, if they follow most of the things that they should be able to qualify for, to reduce their risk score and appeal more to an insurer? Or do you feel like we actually should go back and try to get one list? Because I'm not sure that's even.
Yeah, let me differentiate the third list. The low cost retrofit list was never intended to be used of do these low cost things and now you'll be in compliance. It's just helping digest, making it easier to do something towards full mitigation.
Yeah.
The real work is the science that IBHS has done, and even the National Institute for Science and Technology that has informed the 0 to 5 foot. That's the focal point. And I'm not going to argue whether it should be 2 feet or 5 feet. 5 feet is state law now. Again, regulations to follow. What I think deserves further research, and we partnered with IBHS and with NIST, is to fine tune that. Are there some exceptions? Is it absolutely nothing? Or are there certain plants or certain materials under certain conditions? As you start to get to these one-offs, it overcomplicates it and it makes it difficult for compliance, not only in understanding by the homeowner, but even via inspection, or whether that be a fire department inspection or insurance inspection. But my point is that the nothing flammable is kind of the base. And now we need to kind of continue to focus more science and figure out what are the exceptions. But I'll tell you, I have witnessed the tests that IBHS has done multiple times, and I've watched well manicured, well watered, green, alive rose bushes ignite on fire and spread to a home and burn down the home.
Yeah. That's not what our Rose Society members want to hear, but
No, of course not. That's not what, probably some of our spouses want to hear, or our grandparents who planted these roses 60 years ago and they're meaningful. The landscaping around our home, we often have a emotional attachment to. It's not like clearing dead weeds and picking up the leaves. That's just a chore. We're not connected to it. But these are the kind of mind shifts we have to take to adapt to living in a wildfire prone state.
Yeah, well, that you've said it. That's it. I mean, I think we have to adapt. That's our, that is our imperative. So with that, there's some really good chat going on in the between experts about the how important what really matters, as Steve Quarles points out, is like, okay, so what's at 3 feet? What is there, right? If you were to go down to 2, then what's the next thing at the third is, if it's a highly flammable plant, then then it's a problem. Anyway, I am so grateful to you. I know that everybody on the call is grateful to you. I can tell, because we hardly lost anybody. And thank you so much for your time. We will be back on November 28th at 1:00, same bat time. We will be hearing from Poppy with the Napa matching grant program. We will probably be hearing also about a second topic, but that's TBD. Again, I want to thank Chief Berlant for everything that you're doing, and for being so positive about it, and so flexible, which is, I think, what we all need to be.
State's internet wasn't strong enough to get through the whole presentation, so I'll make sure to send over the slides with the QR code and the links, so that if you want to send that out, you can.
Thank you so much. And I want to just a quick shout out to my team, Emily Rogan, and Joel Loucher, Ben Laterno, Val Brown, and then all of you who have taken time out of your day to be with us. We try to make these hours worth every second, and very specific and impactful. And you did that today, Chief Berlant. So thank you. And with that, it's a wrap.
Have a good afternoon, everybody.